The Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business podcast brings you a unique view of Mesa through its vibrant business community and the subjects that are important. The podcast is produced in the Mesa Chamber of Commerce Media Studio, sponsored by the University of Phoenix. Our podcast is hosted by Mesa Chamber of Commerce CEO Sally Harrison. Please enjoy this episode of the Mesa Chamber Inside Business podcast.
Hi, this is Sally Harrison, the President and CEO of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, and today I'm in our podcast studio with my new friend Erika from SRP. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sally. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. So can you give us a little bit of background? I know you're with SRP, but where'd you come from?
Sure. So I have been with the utility for nearly 16 years.
Okay.
So I have kind of worked my way around the company. I've spent about 13 years in our community outreach, which is now our community partnerships team.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, it's working with all of our communities and ensuring that we have charitable investments in the right places, depending on our the pillars that we have for SRP. So that's kind of where I spent the last 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
In the last few years, I manage SRP supplier diversity and supplier management area.
Uh-huh.
And so everybody always asks me, well, what is that? And so pretty much to put it into perspective, it's essentially the team that focuses on ensuring that we are inclusive of our small and diverse business community and our
Mm-hmm.
procurement efforts.
Okay.
So our role really is to work with our community to identify some potential suppliers that we can fit into procurement projects at SRP.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, can you share the key findings of the SRP inaugural Supplier Diversity Economic Impact Report? That's a mouthful.
It is. Well, it is super exciting. So in our fiscal year 23, SRP, for the first time ever, published a report. And really what we wanted to do is quantify what is the impact, right, of these efforts
Mm-hmm.
at SRP. And so we kind of went through a process to obviously validate our supplier data.
Mm-hmm.
And what we ended up finding was that in our fiscal year 23, essentially all of the spend that SRP has, and when we talk about supplier diversity, we're talking about small and diverse business spend.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that mean? It means anyone that's designated as a small business, or on the diverse business side, it's owner or business owners that are 51% or more owners. They own and control their business, right?
Okay.
So, and that's whether it's a women-owned,
Mm-hmm.
minority-owned, veteran-owned,
Sure.
disabled, LGBT. So with that, in our fiscal year 23, we had a total of $243.3 million in goods and services that were spent with diverse suppliers. So that was all contract dollars that went
Mm-hmm.
out to those businesses. And that is a number that is a percentage, so it's 18% of our overall procurement spend.
Wow, that's a great number.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. And what that was, it ended up being equivalent to working with 700 small and diverse businesses in
Wow.
our supply chain.
That's great. So what does that mean specifically for Arizona?
Yeah, so it was really exciting because not only were we able to find out what's the total number, but we were also able to dig in on what does that mean here locally. And
Mm-hmm.
so super exciting to say that out of that 243.3 million, 113 million of that was here locally with
Wow.
Arizona-based suppliers.
That's great.
And beyond that, I mean, that's nearly 600 jobs
Mhm.
that were created for our local communities that also supported over $40 million in income, $40 million in incomes.
Wow.
And it generated over 22 million in taxes that obviously then all stays back in our local communities.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how SRP identifies and onboards diverse suppliers?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sally, and it's really working with organizations like the chambers, right?
Mhm.
So one of the key groups that we work with are our chambers of commerce, any sort of business groups that we have in our community, but also we have certifying nonprofits that will certify the different types of businesses. And so what we do is it's a combination of going out and doing presentations, boots on the ground, meeting suppliers, networking events. And so once we've identified folks that could potentially be a part of our procurement process, we asked them to register in our supplier portal. So, and I can share that detail with you, but essentially we have a supplier portal, and it's a portal where it allows any supplier that is interested in doing business with SRP to register for any future opportunities.
Okay.
And so I think it's called like prospective supplier, register to be a prospective supplier. And so the idea behind that is that you register in our portal with it has, your basic name, contact information, the types of goods or services that you provide. And so the idea is that if we have any opportunities within the procurement side, if they are asking for, hey, we need X company for X project, we have the ability to search in our system. The other nice thing is that we are also able to reach out to our community partners, like our chambers and our certified partners, that will also give us any businesses maybe in their networks that they know that they could recommend for that work.
That's great. Does SRP provide any development for the suppliers wanting to do business with SRP in case there's little things that they should have in place before they get into the system?
Yeah, so SRP is really involved in a lot of things business related, and just a few things that I'll mention is we're very intentional around ensuring that we're developing suppliers, right? Because there might be some folks that we meet and they may just not have the capacity to work with SRP quite yet because the scope of those projects may just not be in their wheelhouse. And so one of the things that we do is through our community partnerships, we look for ways to leverage opportunities, whether it's through chambers of commerce, our community partners, anyone that is touching businesses, right, or that's working with business owners. Is there opportunities to maybe do a workshop on how they can engage with SRP? And we'll talk about things such as having the right insurance, or being able to negotiate insurance, or being able to negotiate other things that oftentimes ends up being a barrier for a small business to even come into our supply chain. So SRP really focuses on working with our community partners, right? Folks that are already established, that are already doing the work. And is there an event where we can come in and talk about that? So that's one thing that we do. We also are actually excited to relaunch a new program that we're actually going to be offering with ASU. So that's going to be launching in early 2025. And so more information to come on that. But that is going to be a 6-week cohort designated to teach a business on how to scale their business. And that's going to be one of our signature programs.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Can you share any stories maybe about a local business that's thrived, maybe scaled their company while doing business with SRP?
Yeah, so we have a few examples.
I'm sure.
One that comes to mind is a small business that does technology, right? So they do technology, they sell hardware, but they also operate in the cybersecurity space. And so SRP met them through community events. And so SRP invited them to participate in this program that I was just mentioning that we're about to relaunch with ASU. So from 2014 to 2019, SRP operated a program called the Small Business Leadership Academy. And that was an academy through ASU, kind of similar to what I'm describing now. You're going to go through a cohort model, and it's designed to help businesses really hone in to scale their business, figure out what is it that I'm lacking, or what is it that I need to get to that next level. And so this particular business participated in that program. At the time, they were not doing business with SRP. And so during that program, I think they had this realization that as a CEO, they were doing all the things that a CEO does, right? When you're first starting, you're doing everything. But come to realize that if you really want to scale your business, you have to get to a point where you're taking a step back and actually running the business. And letting others do the technical work. And so there's a few things that through his learnings at ASU, he ended up tweaking. And a few years later, he actually had the opportunity to compete for an opportunity to work for SRP. And he ended up winning that contract.
That's awesome.
He is still currently a supplier to SRP. And we're very thankful because not only obviously that was a win for him and his company, but obviously it's serving a critical need that we have at SRP, right? So we always want to think of this as, yes, we are supporting suppliers, but they are supporting us as well, right? They are serving a critical need that SRP has, And so it's just this really great partnership.
That's great. Well, thank you for letting small businesses engage.
Yeah.
So talk about challenges that small and diverse suppliers might face when working with large companies, and how does SRP help them to overcome any of those obstacles?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I will say that it's similar to kind of what I was just describing in terms of the barriers that we see that are probably the most common are going to be the insurance, right? Having the right amount of insurance, having the kind of the team that the small business needs in order to maybe look at a contract and be able to read all the terms and conditions associated with the large contract. So it's having that team, right? Whether it's someone that from a legal perspective can review their contract. And another barrier often also is the payment terms. And so when I mention payment terms, it means like if there's a company that is having cash flow issues and we can't pay them for 90 days, which that's not SRP's standard, by the way, but I mention that because if that's going to put them out of business, then that's something that a small business can negotiate. But they need to know that they can negotiate that, right? And I think oftentimes they feel as if I really want to work with this big company, and if I offer any type of negotiation, I'm going to lose out on this contract. And it's quite the opposite, right? Like we are very willing, our procurement team is great at working with small businesses to identify what are those key things that maybe we can be flexible on. And all it really takes is for the supplier to ask those questions. So when we talk about what do we do as a company to help support them, again, it's kind of leveraging all of our existing community partnerships to talk about that.
That's great.
Because I think the majority of the time it's just people knowing that they can. And once they know that they can, yes, we're open to negotiating that. Then they're more likely to ask the question and to say, hey, maybe I'm not doing a high risk job. Do we really need this amount of insurance, right? Or is that negotiable? Can we lower that a little bit? And so just teaching them that I think has been great. And then obviously, I think one that we all know about that's very common is the cyber insurance, right? I think right now there's a lot of companies that are getting hacked, and so having the right types of protocols in place for their company to ensure there's no cyber attacks.
Well, that's great, because I think some small businesses don't realize that they have the ability to ask those questions, or ask for some of those the extras, right? Like that they can get maybe paid sooner than somebody's proposing to them. And they're just kind of going along with what's in front of them instead of asking for some clarification or maybe a little bit of help here and there.
And one more thing, Sally, is also on the RFP. I think oftentimes is so intimidating for a small business.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because we're asking all of these questions, right? And so the other thing is just we always tell them, like, if you have any questions during that process, ask your procurement agent. Like, ask them for clarification on a question, or what is it that you mean here? Because again, if you don't answer a piece of the RFP, that could be a reason why they disqualify you.
Right.
And so I'd rather they ask more questions, right, and them still be included as part of the process, versus them saying, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me, but really we do need everything answered. And so
I think your first RFP is very intimidating. Not you specifically as SRP, but just in general, when you're filling out a form like that or a grant request, those things, when you see them for the first time and they're pages long and they need clarification on things, it's not just yes or no questions. They're a little bit of work.
Extensive.
Yes. Well, looking ahead, how does SRP plan to expand its supplier diversity initiatives and continue driving positive impact, economic impacts in Arizona?
We have a lot of really exciting things happening in 2025. One which I'll just mention is the supplier diversity strategy initiative came about in 1995 at SRP. So that means that in 2025, we're celebrating an anniversary.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we're really excited to celebrate 30 years. And really, it's a strategic pillar of procurement. And obviously, just having a diverse supply chain just helps us be resilient, and it helps us be competitive. And so, there's a lot of other reasons why this is so important, right? Because it helps us have these backups, right? Especially right now with a lot of the continuous supply chain issues. It just helps us be in a position where we're a stronger company and where we have, right, like a bench ready to go. If there's a supplier that has issues with any type of good, we have a whole slate of other suppliers that can pick up where the other one left off. So next year's 30 years.
Wow.
So with that, we have some exciting efforts coming. So one that I just mentioned earlier was this relaunch of our program with ASU. It's going to be called the Small Business Academy, powered by SRP.
Powered by, of course.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Every pun intended.
So that's an exciting thing. We also, I'll get a little bit ahead, but we are bringing back for the second year our Better Together Business Summit, and that was something that we did for the first time ever earlier this year in January in 2024. We're bringing that back in 2025, and just talking a little bit about that effort is it was the first time where the utility industry came together in support of the small and diverse business community. And so SRP hosted at our facility at the Para Club, and so it was essentially bringing together, you know, SRP, APS, Tucson Electric Power, and Southwest Gas, and so it was a really exciting effort. And so we're bringing that back in 2025. So
that will that be in January?
That'll be in January. Yeah. So we have each utility has kind of their own invite list, right? So it's not necessarily an open to the public, but we do have some, strategic areas that we'd like to focus on in procurement. And so we're being very strategic with the types of businesses that we're inviting.
Sure.
But we are bringing that back in 2025. So that's another,
that was
big
a big
effort.
event, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We had over 350 people there.
That's awesome.
And, we did also about 150 strategic matches
through
matchmaking last year. Earlier this year.
Yeah.
But in 2025, we're going to have a different spin on it, but we're bringing that back. So, and then obviously we're just continuing to do the great work that we've already been doing. This past year, in our fiscal year 24, we are going to be having an updated report. So what I just talked about earlier today about this report, we'll have a new one in the new year, talking about our fiscal year 24 efforts. And we're hoping that 18% will go up.
Yeah. Well, talk about the key takeaways from the 24 event, and what kind of feedback did you receive from the participants?
So it was all wildly positive.
Right.
Some of the key takeaways is that people really appreciate connecting the one-on-one. And not only did we have the 4 utilities there, but we also invited other companies across the state that have strong supplier diversity efforts. So companies are not just coming to this event. They didn't just come to this event to meet the 4 utilities, but they were meeting companies across the state.
Each other.
Yeah. And I'm sure you know this, Sally, but oftentimes small businesses, they're going to work with other small businesses first when they're first starting off, because you got the scale. And so this allowed them to work together. The other, the biggest, I think, success that came out of this was, one, we have kind of a unified front right to our small and diverse business community. The second is there was actually a lot of contracts awarded as a result of this event. So that's
great.
super exciting.
Yeah.
We did get feedback from various suppliers that said, hey, I met so-and-so at this event and this department. And as a result, I was able to achieve X contract.
Oh, that's cool.
So talk about business growth.
Yeah, that's
There was
awesome.
business growth as a result of this. So that's the goal, right? We want, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that if there's opportunities for them to compete as part of the procurement process, they do. And they did. And they won.
So awesome.
So that was the most exciting piece.
That's great. Well, how do people get more information on the upcoming event? Is there a website that they can go to, or is there a person that they can contact?
Yeah, we do have, like I mentioned before, we have more of a closed invite list, right? Only because we're very strategic around the types of businesses that we're trying to get there. But if anyone, obviously has any questions, they can reach out to our team in Supplier Diversity, and they can find our contact information through our website.
Okay.
And that's srpnet.com/supplier diversity.
Okay.
And there they can find a whole lot of information. One, the economic impact report that I just talked about.
Right.
Second, they can register to become a prospective supplier of SRP.
Okay.
So we have that link there. And then third, it has our contact information. So
That's
if they have any questions regarding, hey, I heard this project is happening, tell me more. If they just want to, you know, be able to do a meet with our team, we're happy to do that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming in today. Appreciate it. And maybe after the next event, we can get back together and talk about what that looks like.
Yeah. Thank you, Sally.
Awesome.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
This has been a Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business podcast. You can find all podcast episodes at iTunes, Spotify, or your own favorite podcast website. You can also find them online at mesachamber.org. Content of this podcast is copyright the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, unless otherwise noted.